Howdy, BHRCers. You can find every episode of Why People on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever else you get your podcast content. On this Why People episode number 32, we'll talk to Carrie Walecka, the Chief People Officer at Covera Health. Carrie has an awesome story and an awesome HR and talent background. I can't wait to get into it. So let's stay tuned. All right. Hello and welcome to the Why People podcast. The Why People podcast is a Boston HR Council production. For those folks that don't know or new listeners, the BHRC is the largest HR and people executive community in the world at just under 1,500 HR executive council members. Thrilled to be joined by BHRC co-founder and Why People co-host, Paul Roberts.
Hello, thank you, Sean. It's a beautiful day. Couldn't be more thrilled for today's guest. Let's get to it.
Thanks, Paul. And now the real reason why everyone's here. Excited to introduce Carrie Walecka, the Chief People Officer of Covera Health. Carrie's a great friend with a great background. I'm thrilled to get into it. But Carrie, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, this is really cool. Well, Carrie, we've chatted. You've heard a few of the podcasts, so you know we kind of follow the same cadence, past, present, future. I know you personally. This is really cool for me because it's been neat to watch you do some amazing different things. I know you as like this beacon of talent execution in the tech world, right, in Boston, right? Your reach is obviously now far greater than that, but I'm excited personally to hear the full story. But please help get us acclimated. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came up, and we'll go from there.
All right, cool. And someday when I have my own podcast, I'm going to interview you. But so I have two favorite roles in my life. Chief People Officer of an incredible AI for radiology company, which I tend to refer to as AI for Good, Covera Health. And my other favorite job is being a mom to an incredible 10-year-old who, Sean, you have met, who wants to make a difference in the world. And so that's super helpful in guiding me in like all of my choices of how I live my actual whole life. So, but yeah, I spend most of my days leading the people function at Covera, which is an amazing organization. And I've also been soft launching bar raisers this year, which is the passion behind my career. That's something I've been growing organically over the course of my career, helping others, mostly women, get into the right rooms, right conversations, right interviews, right board seats. And then I just realized one day I want to formalize this and make a go of it. So that's my North Star. But my day job right now is Covera Health, and it's pretty awesome. I'm lucky to be there.
Well, thanks, Carrie, and we'll I'll put you on the spot. Good about bar raisers. We'll talk more about that. But help us understand. How did you get into HR, right? And feel free to go as far back as you want. Grade school, the cradle, college, but help us understand a little bit about you, kind of coming up, so we can understand what got you here.
Yeah, sure. Well, I came up through the recruiting path for my career, which is not rare for a CPO, but it's not the most common route. Most people come up through like a people ops track, and I've been learning along the way. And I've had really amazing partners working for me in my network as well to close the gaps. I've had some incredible right hands. They all happen to also be women, which is you'll see is sort of a theme for me. But Julie Ricciardi, she worked with me at Circle, Monique Sow at Yapstone, and now a woman named Kylie Albright at Covera. They've all helped me close that gap. But I think that for me, growing up professionally through the TA route has really been the ace up my sleeve. And I kind of fell into it after random event planning job I had, which was also super informative and for my career. But I quickly learned how to measure everything and how to analyze like, every single thing that I do. So it helped me create repeatable and scalable processes. And I think the most important part about where like that has gotten me professionally is I've interviewed thousands of job seekers and hiring managers, which creates like an incredible data set of motivations, competencies, and understanding of different corporate cultures. And so indexing that allows me to make a lot of decisions on a day-to-day basis. But at the core, I'm an ENTJ. As you know, you're like into those things as well. But that's been my whole life. I am the consummate big sister. And anyone that knows me will know that. But I grew up in an amazing family. I live in my hometown, 3 miles from mom and dad, and just had like a built-in best friend with a sister. But I have really young parents, and I watched my mom become a career woman over the course of my teenage years, which had a real big impact on me. She's an incredible connector, and as a realtor, we call her a dreams broker. And seeing her become her own source of income and find her own passion really shaped me. And on the other side, I have an incredible dad who is like a true provider in the traditional sense. He's a retired engineer who would leave the house early in the morning, would come home late, and like worked in really traditional office settings. Still asks me all the time, like, when am I returning to an office? And he's highly respected for his work, his commitment, and his reliability. So it's interesting. They had such completely different career paths, but they both shaped me into many ways of like how I value work and life. And it's just a really funny crossover. And then Sean, your LinkedIn posts I just find them to be so, like, relevant to my life in a lot of ways because my parents, they worked so hard, and that was before, like, remote life and all that, but they always showed up for us kids, and, they were at all of our games, like, no matter how far they were. They'd come to Salve Regina to see me, like, shoot hoops and slip me 20 bucks after the game to get dinner. They would, like, host the spaghetti team nights in high school, and they always had great balance, and they always showed up for us and showed us that, like, we were first, and I think that that's really helped me understand, like, how to do that myself as a parent, but also as a leader in an organization to lead with balance like that.
So cool, and geez, I wish you guys could have brought me in. I got the $5 handshake after games. I was like, "Ma, this is gonna get me a Snickers and maybe a, whatever the heck kind of drink, but we're not gonna go too far." But, that's really cool, Carrie, and thanks for kinda getting us started here. And I think we'll get into this a little bit later, but it's neat that you share that you're kinda your superpower or kinda your HR and people foundation is the talent acquisition, the recruiting side, because it does seem like all of our guests have some, some area that they started in, and that got them involved. But, the first time we've heard event planner, and kind of looked at event planning from all of the measurables needed to ensure success, and then kind of transfer that into a broader business scope. And I just laugh because Paul has kind of turned into a master event planner. I don't think he ever had that on his bingo card. Just but through the Boston HR Council and the Ledger Society and all the groups we help out with. A lot of what we do is that event planning, and you're right, the measurables, especially when a lot of it's being kind of funded out of your own pocket. You start to pay a little bit closer attention to the analytics and to how can we make this better and more efficient. So it's neat to hear you say that you took that and rolled that into recruiting. So okay, so we have kind of this foundation of what got you started. Now, help us kind of learn a little bit. You got into recruiting. Tell us a little bit about your early career and what that looked like how you kind of found yourself, how you kind of found what you were good at, how you supplemented what you weren't good at. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So something that is interesting, I will share like how I got my first job, just because this is a kind of an interesting story, like how like luck meets opportunity and sometimes skill and sometimes not. But I was at a job fair. This is like when job fairs were still a thing when I was in college, and I had 5 resumes. So I lived in Newport, and my friends and I like went up to Boston, went to a job fair. It was all the tables, and everyone was giving out like little tchotchkes at each table. So I gave my resume to a bunch of PR companies because for some reason I like thought I was gonna do PR or marketing or advertising, and that was when Volkswagen became really cool again, and they had those really cool commercials, and I was like, "Oh, I just like, would love to do that. That would be my dream job," which is just so ironic now, but then I got to this table for an investment company, and I was just chit-chatting with the recruiter, and my friend who was a business major, she was talking, like, very seriously at the table next to us about something at Mellon Bank, and I'm just shooting the breeze with this guy, and he's like, "You know what? Like, he's like, "We didn't come here to talk about this today, but, like, we have an event planner job, and I feel like you're really personable, like, maybe you could do that job. That could be cool. Do you have a resume?" And I was like, "Oh, no, I don't." And he's like, "What do you mean you came to a job fair without a resume?" And I was like, "Well, I gave them all out for like, I'm like, see all these things I have. I gave my resumes out for like basically candy, and here we are now. So I said, but like, I don't know if I'm really looking for a job. Like, I hadn't graduated yet. I just want to take the summer off and just chill. Because I've been working so hard at college, which is a joke. But so anyway, I got home that day and I had an answering machine, and on my answering machine was a voicemail from the career office at Salve Regina saying someone called a recruiter from Pioneer Investments and said that they met you today at a job fair and they were really impressed, and they also really appreciated your authenticity, even including how you didn't have a resume, and they want to interview you for a job. So like, here's their information, call them. So it's funny. So I got my first job without a resume, but then ended up having a great experience, worked for all women there too, which was interesting and I think probably really formative for me. But what was great about that role, and it's something I will say, I'll give you guys credit. Your events are amazing because they're really relationship driven. And I think that was the thing I liked about it. I liked giving people a really good experience, making them feel, for whatever reason, they were invited to our events there. They were our brokers and our, big important partners, making them feel the value that we cared about them and we wanted their experience to be great is actually like something that's carried all the way through. So then when I went into recruiting, when I realized I don't really want to worry about how someone's steak is cooked at a really big dinner, I just want to like think about other things. I went into recruiting to figure out how to find people the job that lights them up. Like, how could they be happy at work? And it was really cool to do that because I worked with so many different companies in Boston, and a lot of my portfolio was financial companies and venture capital companies and private equity companies, but working through helping people get the foot in the door there that they couldn't have done otherwise, and then helping them build what would eventually become a really carefully crafted career for them. So it's interesting that Paul has that secret skill set of event planning, because I think really what it comes down to is like, you could be a great event planner if you care about the experience and if you care about the relationship. And so that's probably why your events are so good. But that's actually how I got started. And then it just carried forth of like really caring about what somebody needed and how to find that for them. And then also for the companies, how to find them the person with skill set and the culture match or culture add that was going to help hopefully 10x their business.
That's so cool. It's neat to hear you say that, Carrie. Well, all of that was interesting, and I didn't know most of it, but I like what you said about the relationship piece, regarding that, because in not to make the conversation about Paul and I at all, but we go back and forth a lot on these events, right? And we have Hunter and Jen help us out, with a lot of the work, but you know Paul very much cares more than me about the venue and the fireworks and the all of the things, right? And I think that's important because, my goodness, if it was left to just me, we'd be in some strange, dingy place, like, but I always, and I'm on the other side of it usually, and again, when, as an event planner, you're always worried about, are people gonna come, right? And what if they don't come, and what does that look like? But geez Louise, you talk about the relationship piece. Some of our best events, unfortunately, only half the people showed up, right? And you can shake your fist and say, boo to people who no call, no show the day of, but humans are humans. Like, life happens. And
Mhm.
and we've got to this place now that we're just like, whoever's here, it's gonna be awesome, right? We're gonna be able to spend time with people that we don't normally spend time with, and those people are spending time with people they don't get to spend time with, and it always turns out awesome, like, regardless of the place, so it's cool to hear you say that. Now, a question for you, and I know you, so I'm gonna be interested about your answer here. You're very humble. When did you realize you were pretty dang good at this recruiting, talent acquisition? Like when did you realize you were good? And it wasn't just something you liked, but it was also something that you excelled at.
That's a great question. I'm not actually sure. I think something I've always been really proud of though is it's when I was a recruiter, how many referrals I would get. And it just always felt great. Like somebody thought highly enough of me to say she's great, whether that be a candidate or a company calling and saying, hey, you helped so and so hire so and so. We want you to do that for us too. And eventually, some of my clients, the companies, were calling me and saying, we have an in house job. Like, could you come work here? Like, we would love for you to work just for us exclusively. And I always said no, and because I loved where I worked, but right before I made the transition to in-house, I was working for Hollister Staffing for this woman, Kip Hollister. She's really well known in the Boston community, and I thrived there. I loved having I met some of my best friends there. I learned a lot about myself. It's where I developed, made tons of mistakes, but where I developed as a manager, good, bad, or otherwise, and I liked having a portfolio of clients, but then one day I just thought, "You know what? I keep seeing these candidates keep coming back and forth, but I don't really know what it's like to work with them. I don't know what it's like to advance their career from the inside. Maybe I do want that." And, that's actually how I ended up going over to Bright Cove, and someone referred me, another recruiter that had his own place referred me into Bright Cove, and it just worked out perfectly. It was, like, an amazing opportunity for me, and from there then on, I realized, like, this is the like, I'm doing a great job. This is the work that lights me up, and seeing what life was like on the other side of the coin was super fascinating too. And then I realized when I got there, oh, if I really want to make an impact on people's careers, I probably need to switch to the people track versus the recruiting track because that's actually how you work on developing them, etc. Like being the recruiter, you can get them in the door, but being on the people track is how you really unlock and unblock them. And so it was really there. I had an amazing manager, this woman, Katie Kulikowski. I think she's in your network too. She is like by far one of my best mentors. She has the way she leads HR truly is people first, and she just exudes positive intent and like have fun while you get it done. And I think that unlocked that in me, and that's what allowed me to make the shift.
Well, I mean, and yeah, Katie's awesome. I love the way you described her because that's totally her to a T, and it's pretty neat. Carrie, Bright Cove has a pretty good like I don't know how to explain it. Like I use obnoxious like sports analogies, right? But it has like this cool, in sports you call it a coaching tree, right? Like people that were on one staff have gone out and done some amazing things. There's some amazing Bright Cove alum that are now chief people officers and high level VPs all over the place. I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, Bright Cove spiderwebbed into so many other things, which is so amazing, and there was a great article while I was there. Keith, Klein from VentureViz put an article out about all of the amazing companies that have come out of Bright Cove, and so many of my colleagues there are working at, those incredible, like, Facebook and Meta type of companies, but also have started so many businesses, and actually, the role I had after Bright Cove is I followed the founder and CEO of Bright Cove over to Circle, and, so I worked at Circle next too, but, that was also largely with, like, one of my favorite executives, he's the Chief Revenue Officer, which is an amazing name for a Chief Revenue Officer, but I was so excited to work with him and see him in a different role there too, and that was an amazing role. That was my first non-TA role. That was my first opportunity to lead a people operations type of function, so I led, the business partner team, I led the operations team, and I led the L&D team. It was amazing. But I do think that Bright Cove had this amazing thing, we call it the Cove, and, we have our own Slack channel now for, like, post-Cove life, and it was an awesome place to work and to really, like, hone my skills and all that stuff. My first year, I got invited to the, Cove Club, which was their president's club, for, like, really 10Xing on recruiting and things like that, and so I felt my value there immediately. Like, I felt that they valued me, and it was great. That set a nice foundation for me to be able to feel confident and comfortable and pushing the envelope and doing different things and trying different things and getting creative, and that environment, it was really good for, like, psychological safety as an employee just to be able to, like, really try new things because that's what that business was. It was all new. When I worked there, people still had cable. Like, everyone still had cable, and no one understood where I worked. They would be like, "What's streaming? What's cord cutting? Like, what is that?" And that's actually one of the things about my career that's really interesting too is so I worked there and I immediately cut cable because, like, you couldn't have cable and work there. It was very uncool to have cable and work there. And then I went into the digital currency space at Circle, and everyone was like, "What is cryptocurrency? This is crazy. Is it real?" And now I'm in an AI company, and what I say is, like, that's the beauty of a people role also. You can get dropped into all these different companies and cultures, and for me, the thread is, like, fast-moving technology, new technology, being around incredible thinkers that are solving problems that just the world hasn't seen yet, right? And I do my thing and I'm good at my thing and they're really good at their thing. But that's what keeps it so interesting for me. Like I otherwise would not have a skill set that could be brought into all of those different types of environments. So I'm learning all the time.
That's great, Carrie, and it kind of brings us to, like, the next part of this conversation, right? And you've already talked about this a little bit, right? About your the feeling of being part of the front end process and saying, "Hey, I kinda wanna be a part of seeing this thing all the way through and being, more a part of the full employee journey." Can you tell us a little bit about when you started thinking about, "Hey, it would be really cool to lead this whole function, and I think I can," and, like, what that process looked like, both from your mindset to the actions that you took to, achieve it?
Yeah, sure. I think if you're not a little bit scared of what you're doing, then, like, at least for me, then, like, there's really nothing at stake. So I always like having, like, a little bit of fear about, like, "Can I do this?" Like, "Of course I can do this," right? And so making the shift from Bright Cove to Circle came from me realizing I wanna be on the other side of this track, and that wasn't available at Bright Cove. And it became available at Circle, so I said, "Okay." Like, it's my first job switch in a remote world. That was during COVID, and I felt really comfortable making the shift because I knew people there and taking that on and surrounding myself by, like, really, really smart people. Like, the woman who was my right hand on the people function was, like, she's bar none, she's amazing. She's still there, she's fantastic. And that allows you to really ask the questions. Like, you should never be embarrassed to say, "I don't know how to do this." Like, how do we do this? How can we do this better?" And so having partnerships like that, I think give you the freedom to figure it out, and also not knowing allows you to question some things and say, "Okay, so I'm gonna have the employee lens, the every employee lens. Why is that?" Like, in HR world, that makes sense, but that doesn't make sense to me as the employee. And I think having that allowed me to bridge the gap of why we make decisions in HR or people that we make and how do we communicate them to the organization in a way that makes sense for the organization. Because whenever you share anything, whether someone's a manager, an executive, or an employee, they're an employee first, and they're always thinking as a natural thing, what does this mean for me? And so having not come from that people ops track, I think has allowed me to challenge some of the things that are norms, and then also like how do we make them more normal to an organization? How do we make them friendlier or just make more sense, right? And so it's I don't know that I've ever had that moment where like, oh, I want to take it all on. It just sort of happened organically over time. And then I got approached to join Yapstone, and that was a really cool opportunity. I had a couple of opportunities all at the same time. One of them was actually super cool. I refer to it as working for Mr. Serena. I had an interview with him and I was like, I can't believe I'm interviewing with the founder of Reddit. This is so cool. And he was screen sharing and he was showing me something on the screen. I'm like looking at all of his tabs, thinking like, oh my gosh, this is what he's interested in. And that was so cool. And I almost went there because I thought like, how do you not work for him? Like this is amazing. But I ended up wanting to just try something different, work in fintech, and that's what I did. And that was a great move too at Yapstone. But that was my first time running that show. And in that role, I ended up also becoming our chief operating officer for a year. So that was a doozy. That was new. And that taught me how to make true, true, true business decisions that have now shaped how I am as a CPO because now I understand a much fuller picture of business.
That's really, neat, Carrie, and something we've heard from, you know, a majority of our guests is, from a CHRO or chief people officer standpoint, it's a unique position in the sense that you are part of an executive leadership team, right? You're part of that team. You're also the leader of your HR and people function, and having to be on both teams, they don't always. It's not always the same sentiment. In having to be a great teammate on both teams can be hard sometimes. So, tell us a little bit about that dynamic. I didn't know about the COO piece at Yapstone, so you probably have even some better insight here.
Yeah, I disclosed that during all of my interviews, but I don't have it on my profile because like, I never wanna do that job again. But, it was interesting, but I never wanna do it again. But one of the things so I love the founder that I work for right now, he's fantastic, he's a genuine founder, he's fascinating, he's interesting, and he's a he's a true partner, but he refers to me as the independent ELT member, and I kinda like that, and, because I am part of the team, but I, like, literally am there to support and partner with every other function. So while the CFO has a similar role where his opportunity is to serve everyone as well, everybody else has a vertical that they really own and have to lead, but we have to tie things together for everyone, him from a budget standpoint and me from a, "How do we make this work for everyone?" standpoint. And it's a really, really interesting role to be in. A lot of chief people officers find themselves as like a CEO whisperer. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I think it's true in a lot of cases, but I would much rather be on a transparent team where all the cards are on the table and you're just working things through. Because I always say, like, you're not when you're trying to solve problems, the best way to be is be on the same side as the table, like, as that person. The problem is on the table, but if you're sitting across from them, that's a whole 'nother dynamic. Like, you might see a 6, I might see a 9, right? But if you're on the same side and everyone sees what's at stake here, you can see all the pieces on the board, it's a much easier way to get to a better outcome, and everybody might not like the outcome, but everyone knows why we made the decision we made, and then we live with it, and then we operate from it, and if it's not a great decision, we revert, right? Not like, we're not solving, like, high stakes life things in the moment, right? Our company definitely is from an AI perspective, but when we're sitting around a conference room, like, we are not necessarily holding someone's life in our hands.
That's great. I love the independent ELT term. Joe San Gregorio, who's CHRO at Curia, he talks about that. He doesn't use that term, but he's like, yeah, we're the only C-suite person that's kind of charged with bringing all the functions together and kind of creating synergy. And I'm going to steal the independent ELT thing.
Yeah, by all means, steal
So,
it.
so Carrie, we got about 10 minutes left in conversation here, and before we get to kind of the future and how you're thinking about the work, I think a good maybe bridge to that is if you could tell us a little bit about Bar Raiser and tell us a little bit about your passion there. I know it's something you're super passionate about, but would love to give the audience more information, understand how people can learn more about it, if they'd like to, but just wanna allow you to tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking. I love talking about it, but I will be brief because I know we've got other things. But it's just something that really happened organically. For my whole career, I've just been helping people, and I love that. I love helping people. I love making connections, and I certainly help men as well. But I find that women are the ones that sometimes you have to offer your help. They don't always ask, right? And, I don't know if just I am a real independent woman, but some of the things that are not getting talked about in a way that I think they should get talked about, women are talking about. So women are talking about so many things that men should be talking about. Like, how do we keep women in the workforce? How do we elevate them? How do we mentor them? How do we get professional men to also help unlock this? Because they're in a lot of the conversations, they're in a lot of the rooms, right? And there are so many men that wanna help, they don't know how to help, they don't know what to do, they don't wanna be accused of mansplaining or anything else, so it's like, how do you actually connect that in a way that works? But then also all these studies show why it's important to a company's culture and a bottom line to have women in leadership positions, but they don't lean into the data. So how do you help them do that? And so I started just, like, thinking about it and figuring, like, I just wanna formalize all the stuff that I'm doing all the time. And I wanna be able to channel it somewhere and let people know, like, this is what I do, this is what I'm about, this is how I work. And I'm really mindful to, like, you bring your whole self to work and you bring your whole self home, and, like, right now, like, I don't know if we work at home or if we live at work, like, I don't even know. The blinds are so blurred, right? But I think that there is an opportunity to really figure out how to help women, like, hold their own megaphone, and I guess that's really just what it's about, is a lot of women don't have that confidence, but they need that introduction, or they need that help, or they need that support, and that's all I wanna do, and I know so many incredible women that can, like, send the elevator back down and help bring people back up, like, and I just want to give them an opportunity and give them a formalized way to do that also. So in this community, there's so many women that we're coaching and helping, and we're introducing them to other people to help them either get interviews or just network. And so many women that I know that are in the C-suite or are senior leaders, they want to give back and they don't know how to do it. They don't know they don't know where they can do it. And so this is just creating an opportunity for that to happen. So it's really just I hear a lot of people say like they want a seat at the table. And I always I just think that's interesting because I would never work anywhere where I didn't. But at the same time, I get it that that's not always the case. But then I was like, I just rather sit at the bar. It's just so much more fun. And like, who wants to sit at the table at the bar? And so that's really where like bar raisers kind of came from. Like, we're raising the bar, and I want other women that want to help raise the bar for all of us, and but do it from the bar. And so that's just really that's what it is. It's a little cheeky, but it's fun and it's important work. And there's so many other women who feel the same way I do. And so just oh wait,
Gary, sorry to interject here, but first of all, kudos to you. That's an amazing mission. And gonna kind of put you on the spot here, but
yeah.
for professional men like Sean and I, any quick practical things on the spot you can tell us right now that we can do to help with this mission?
I love that question. I think one, be people that I can tap to say, hey, for anyone who's thinking about getting into the type of work that you're in or how to build networks or whatever, to say, I know these amazing guys that have done an amazing job at that, and they would be willing to talk to you about it. They'd be willing to open up their network to you. They'd be willing to make introductions for you. It's so interesting to me that people are afraid to ask for an introduction. And I always say, like, no, it's fantastic. Like, if I send someone to a hiring manager, they're so grateful. They're like, thank you for sending me a candidate or a person that is vetted by you already. Like, that's a gift. Right. And there's beauty in introductions, there's beauty in relationships. And what's so great about you guys is you guys give, 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 not to get. I mean, that's, I think, the most amazing thing about what the BHRC is. Like, it's you're not asking for anything in return. And that's really the beauty of like what I'm trying to do here. So yeah, so follow us on LinkedIn and be people that I know I can count on to make introductions for. But thank you for asking.
That's great, Carrie. Well, we're excited to help, and we'll put some information in the comment section when this posts. But that's neat, and I know we've chatted about it, but it's neat to watch you formalize all of it and exciting.
Thanks.
All right, so now we'll talk about the future.
Okay.
And we always end the conversation, Carrie, with really two questions, right? And the two questions are, first, tell us a little bit about how you're thinking about the work moving into the future. And I'm excited to hear your answer, given the kind of place that you work, which is really kind of futuristic. But number two, advice that you might give to a listener that is either interested in perhaps starting a career in people in human resources, or early on in their career and saying, "Hey, I'd like to be the next, Carrie Walecka. Like, how do I do it?" So two questions.
I would love for anyone to say they want to be the next Carrie Walecka. I would advise them against that, but those are great questions. So what I'm thinking about professionally and like what I think is coming next is AI is going to continue to be everywhere. And I know everyone's talking about it. AI is like the new big data, all that kind of stuff, you know. We all need to get on board and figure out how to manage it. I did hear someone say once, AI is like the internet. For everyone who refused to get on the internet, that would take your job. But if you got on the internet and figured out how to use the internet to do your job, you will be more successful. And it is the same with AI. I use AI for everything. I mean, it's like everything. I can't even get into it. It's amazing and it's fantastic. And my company uses it for much broader and better purposes, but I don't know how I would function without it at this point in my life. So I just don't be afraid. Just learn it. Like learn it, ask questions, go to all the webinars. There's a million of them. Everyone wants to talk about it. And then also if you're a chief people officer or an executive, let your employees get into it. Let them get their hands dirty with it and then figure out what the parameters are, but don't make it scary. We encourage it for everything. Even just recently doing some renewals, I started plugging all the PowerPoint presentations into ChatGPT and said, please make a spreadsheet for me on this. Show me what the differentials are between 12 months, 24 months, average, per seat, etc. And it did all the analysis. I put it in a sheet and it gave me an analysis. And I was like, this is great. 85% of the way there. So just like an easy example. Sorry, I didn't even ask for that. But then the other thing that I'm trying to solve for that I know I'm not alone is employee engagement. It's never been lower, ever. And we have to figure out how to navigate what seems like never ending change. Like we're in disruptive times, politically, technically, emotionally. It's so hard to predict anything in this world. And then to try to give employees a sense of stability, even if you're not a chief people officer, but if you are, this is the stuff that keeps us up at night. And we haven't figured out the post COVID world, hybrid, remote, return to office. But what we do know now is there's no more one size fits all. And I think that it used to feel like there was one size fits all because there was no other option. Like you were going into the office, you were taking a train, you were driving, you were walking, however you got there, you got there. But now we've opened Pandora's box in that sense. And I'm, for one, grateful for that because I love being remote. But we have to figure out how to work with that and how to work in that. And giving employees choice, making them feel valued in their paychecks, in the work that they do, in the way we're asking them to do it, and who they're working with is what we have to solve for. So I don't have the answer, but that's what's next. That's big for everyone.
Yeah. Love it. I love it, Carrie. Yeah, shoot, there's a podcast series just in what you just shared in that, 2.5 minutes. We could talk about that forever. But thank you for allowing us to look into your brain of how you're thinking about the future of the work. Now the advice for an early on, or maybe someone who's not even in HR and people yet, that wants to get in, and the early on person who wants to rise.
So there are a couple things that I think of all the time. And one, my mom taught me like really, really early on. This is when I was a headhunter on 100% commission, and I was like, "How am I going to pay my rent?" But do what you love, and the money will follow. And I believe that. I think it's true. And then I had a boss who once said, "Make decisions that will allow you to sleep when you put your head on the pillow." And I think that's a great one. And then another thing that came from earlier on in my career that I've used, I use it often, but I remember this guy saying, "Interview candidates objectively, but as graciously as you would want someone to interview your mom." And I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, like that, wow, okay." But now I use that as like whenever I'm meeting with someone on an interview or anything where I think the person on the other side of the computer screen or the desk might have like some nerves or feel less comfortable, I think to myself, like, okay, like how do I give them the facts, but how do I literally treat them as graciously as I would want someone to treat my mom? And like that's really what it comes down to. And I love my mom. So everyone should be kind to my mom. She's the kindest person in America. But that really does help you kinda, like, keep it focused.
That's great advice. Geez, I'm gonna steal that from you too, Carrie. I like that. Interview or meet with someone with the same grace that you would do for your own mom. I like that.
But you know what? Like, you do these things, like, basic things as a person, like, your star will continue to rise if you want it to. Like, it's a little bit of grit, it's a little bit of luck, it's a little bit of hustle, but, like, as long as if you're a good person and you treat people well, like, you will get where you need to go.
Well, Carrie, this has been amazing. It's been a long time coming. Thank you so much for joining us and allowing us to dig into you and your career. But this has been great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.